You could see it through clouds if you wanted to. These have a resolution, these have a width, I would guess, of 3 or 4 kilometres wide. You know, and answer the question of what it is, I certainly don't know, and the Russians aren't telling us.
Scientists are also puzzled by this shadow pictured on the surface of Mars by both optical and heat-seeking cameras. They're convinced it's a shadow because they can see objects on the surface beneath. But a shadow of what? Finally, there's the mystery of the vanishing spacecraft. The Russians have yet to release the last picture transmitted by Phobos before it lost contact with ground control. But the Russians have said that it shows an object coming towards the spacecraft, an object which, in their words, should not have been there.
The spacecraft was circling Mars, coming into the same orbit as the moons of Mars. And the last picture, they got halfway through it, and they saw something there which shouldn't be there. Professor Kapitsa makes the joke that it's Martian people.
British scientists will be able to judge for themselves when the Soviets bring their pictures to a conference at Exeter next month. Because, of course, there must be a sensible explanation, mustn't there?
The Russians do not bring any pictures to the Exeter conference. How does the Russian Space Agency explain the spacecraft's destruction or disappearance?
It does take a minimum of precision criteria to obtain on the image these spots, which some would like to call flying saucers, that appeared within the visual field of the infrared range. It must be pointed out that the flying saucer version is not ours. Actually, at first we were saying that there was no flying saucer, that surely all that we saw could be explained in understandable, natural and physical terms.
One possibility could easily be that a small meteorite, a small bit of rock, was in the same orbit of Phobos and hit it.
In an exclusive interview conducted in October 1990 in Moscow, Professor Lev Mukin of the Soviet Space Research Institute discredits the meteorite theory.
There were attempts to hypothesize that there had been a collision between the space probe, which was then orbiting Mars in alignment with the orbit of Mars moonlet, and strands of dust surrounding the moon Phobos itself. But some fairly accurate computations made by several organizations and by our institute as well have shown that this assumption is totally baseless.
If not meteorite or debris, then what could possibly explain the mishap? A long silence follows. Then in December 1991, Marina Popovich, former cosmonaut trainee and retired Air Force colonel, holds a surprise press conference at the Russian consulate in San Francisco. She unearths the mysterious last photograph taken by Phobos. There is a strange shape in the foreground. Colonel Popovich refers to this as an unidentified flying object, a UFO. The object is juxtaposed against what appears to be the planet's tiny moonlet, Phobos, for which the craft is named. But how is the mysterious shadow explained? The Russians say it is a shadow of some object on or just above the Martian surface. Upon further examination in April 1992, when all of the related photographs are compared side by side, scientists reach the conclusion that the shadow is actually moving. If Mars was indeed the site of a space base in antiquity, could the failure of these Soviet space missions be attributed to some sort of alien intervention? Could the ancient space base have been reactivated?
So the mystery remains. What caused the spacecraft to destabilize? Was it a malfunction? Or was there an outside cause, perhaps an impact? The question that arises is indeed a simple one. Was the spacecraft Phobos 2 hit by something that put it out of commission? The circumstances in which Phobos 2 was lost suggest that someone might be back on Mars, someone ready to knock out what to them is an alien spacecraft.
Was Phobos deactivated by intelligent beings wishing to protect themselves from outsiders? Or perhaps there's some other more conventional explanation? We may never know. But indulging the possibilities of otherworldly visitors in the present will help us acclimate to their differences if and when they finally do come calling. The question remains, how would we as a culture respond to incontrovertible evidence of a species of beings that not only preceded our own but actually engineered mankind?
Of all the elusive mysteries, the greatest is the riddle of life itself. How did it begin? From what corner of the universe did the first emanations of existence arise? Was the seed of life carried to Earth from the planet Nibiru?
There has been a blending of interest in biologists on one hand and planetary astronomers on the other in the question of the origin of life. Because the same questions about how life originated on Earth also would apply to Mars or some other solar system. And just as they really can't explain how life originated on Earth, they don't really know how it originated elsewhere.
Contemporary scientific thinking cautiously asserts that life arrives on Earth when certain chemical substances crash into the surface aboard a stray comet early in our planet's history.
What we are trying to find out in the meteorites is to see whether there are any of these molecules related to life. There are certain molecules like the amino acids which may be described as the building blocks of life.
Directed panspermia, another scientific theory, suggests that life on Earth is seeded by a race of beings from outside the planet, not by chance, but as the deliberate activity of an otherworldly society. The Bible suggests that the creation of humankind comes at the end of a long list.
All the fishes of the sea, and all the fowl that fly the skies, and all the animals that fill the earth, and all the creeping things that crawl upon the earth. It was only then that Elohim created the atom.
In the last few pages of the story of creation, the Sumerians point to the Anunnaki as the creators of mankind, our own benefactors of life. According to Sumerian text, the Anunnaki, in advance of landing 445,000 years ago, sent androids to scout the Earth. 150,000 years later, the Anunnaki themselves arrive and create humankind. How was Adam created? According to the Sumerians, it was by genetic engineering, fertilization in vitro, in a glass tube, as depicted in this cylinder seal rendering.
Adam was the first test tube baby.
In Genesis chapter 1, verse 26, the Bible reads,
Let us make the atom in our image and likeness.
But why? Sumerian documentation suggests the Anunnaki create humanity to assist in mining African gold that they need to save the dwindling atmosphere of their home planet, Nibiru.
Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, the three great Western traditions, religious traditions, are all founded on the idea that there's something special about human beings. We didn't arrive here accidentally, so we're not just some consequence of billions of years of pointless accidental permutations of life forms. No, we were created in the image of God. The creation really is about the process of our salvation. Now, what if it were the case that there were creatures both technologically more advanced than us, older than us in terms of their civilization, and maybe even more intelligent than us, and more spiritually advanced, if we could imagine that? Then would this cause the creation story to collapse and leaving, literally billions of people on the planet totally confused about the meaning of life?
The Bible relates an incident of mankind overstepping the bounds of the Anunnaki when the Babylonians attempt to reach the gods by building an enormous launch pad in the archetypal story of the Great Tower of Babel. What is the target of their efforts? According to Zecharia Sitchin, it is our neighboring planet Mars, home of the Anunnaki's way station en route to Earth.
The Sumerian tablets refer to the station planet Mars as the traveler's ship.